Hi there. Right, I promised. How was Zachariah chosen by Lot? How did that by Lot work? This is how it worked. The temple master, who was, you could say, the caretaker of the temple, who it would be a priest that lived in Jerusalem, retired, and he'd be almost like a caretaker of the temple, looking after everything during the week and so on. And he would send the trainee priests, a couple of trainee priests, up to the living quarters, and they would walk through the passages of the priests' living quarters that was built in the walls, and they'd call out, attend to your all priests attend to your duties, all priests attend to your duties. And the priests would file down to the huge chamber where the Sanhedrin normally met. The master of the temple would be standing in the middle of the temple with his eyes closed, head bent, and they'd file in. So they'd randomly file in as they arrived from their sleeping quarters. So there wasn't, they couldn't work out a specific order, and they'd form a circle around him. Once he knew that they were all in place, that he could hear that they were all there, he'd raise his hand, finger pointing, eyes still closed, turn on his heel at least minimum of 3 times, and stop at random. Open his eyes, and whichever priest his finger ended up pointing at, he would say, "Name yourself." The priest would call out his name, and the master of the temple would say, "Remove your headdress," and he would remove his headdress. Then he'd say, if it was for the lot for the burning of the incense, the master of the temple would announce, "All those who have burnt incense, take one step back." So they take all the priests that have had an opportunity to burn the incense would take one step back. The circle would close, and the master of the temple would say, point to the guy without the headdress, and he'd say, "No, sorry." He would then take a clay jar, which had pebbles in it with numbers on, right? And they'd count the number of priests attending or serving for that week, and they'd add 50% to that. And there would be a minimum of 50% more numbers in the jar than there were priests. So, in other words, if there was 100 priests serving that week, remember, a couple have already fallen out because they'd already burnt the incense. If there was 100, so if they were left, if there were with 100 priests, they'd make sure that there was a minimum of 150 stones or numbers in the jar. So the priest would pull out a number and read it out. Let's say he pulls out a stone and it's got 121 on it, or 120, for instance. He would call out 120, then he'd look at the priest without the headdress and say, "Begin to number." And the priest without the headdress would call out one. The priest to his left would call out two. The priest to his left would call out three. And so it would go on right round the circle and round the circle until they got to the number 120. And the priest that called out 120, he was the one that would burn the incense for that morning or that evening service. And in our story, behold a man It was, well, it's in the Bible actually. It was Zechariah who ended up calling out the number to do it, to burn the incense. And so began our story of the birth of John the Baptist, the birth of Christ, the teachings of Christ, his life and his death for us. I hope you've learned something. I hope it was interesting. Just remember, Easter is coming up. Behold a Man and its sequel, actually, is the perfect present for Easter weekend. So you can, the best place to go is Drafted Digital. I'll put the website on here right now. God bless. And if you are watching this on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe if you want more of my posts, to hear more of my posts. God bless you. All my love. Cheers.